Cassie Morgan was crowned prom queen at 10:47 p.m. By midnight, she was dead, buried beneath the gym floor in her glittering silver dress, her crown bent and blood on her hands. What seemed like the perfect night turned into a haunting crime, and the killer wasn't a stranger, it was someone who used to call her best friend. The night sky above Eastfield shimmered with stars, but nothing sparkled more than the high school gymnasium. For months, students had planned their dream prom, and now the moment had finally arrived. The gym had been transformed into a wonderland of soft lights, golden drapes, and sparkling confetti. Music filled the air, echoing the excitement of seniors dancing in their elegant gowns and sharp tuxedos. It was a night meant to be remembered forever, a celebration of youth, love, and the future. But among the laughter and joy, something unseen was moving quietly, like a shadow with a secret. Cassie Morgan stood out like a diamond among pearls. Her silver dress glittered under the lights as she moved gracefully through the crowd, smiling for photos and greeting classmates. She was the favorite to win prom queen, not just for her beauty, but for her charm and popularity. Her boyfriend Drew walked beside her, tall and proud as if nothing in the world could ever go wrong. But there was a tension in Cassie's eyes that no one noticed. Beneath her polished appearance, she carried something no one could see: fear. For the past few weeks, Cassie had been receiving disturbing messages from an unknown sender. Notes slipped into her locker, text messages from untraceable numbers, and even a letter at her front door. The words were always cold and threatening, warning her that she didn't deserve the crown, that the night would end in darkness. Cassie never told Drew or her friends. She didn't want to spoil what was supposed to be the best night of her life. She believed it was probably a jealous prank. After all, high school was full of competition and envy. Outside the school, a car sat parked beneath a flickering streetlight. Inside, someone waited, dressed in black from head to toe, face hidden under a hood. The person held a small notebook filled with scribbles, drawings, and photos, many of them of Cassie. The person flipped through the pages slowly, stopping on a photo of Cassie laughing with Drew. A red X had been drawn across her face. The figure closed the book and stepped out of the car, slipping unnoticed into the side entrance of the building, just as the music grew louder inside. Back in the gym, the dancing had reached its peak. Students lost in the rhythm, teachers watching from the sidelines, phones capturing every smile. No one noticed the faint creak of a door opening near the stage. No one saw the figure move through the shadows behind the curtains, and no one imagined that someone among them was about to disappear forever. As the night ticked on, the countdown to tragedy had already begun. The stage was set, the lights were shining, and the perfect illusion of joy masked the horror waiting to unfold. The music faded just before 10:45 p.m. and the spotlight turned to the stage. It was time to announce the prom king and queen, always the highlight of the night. Students gathered near the stage, clapping and cheering, their phones raised high to capture the moment. A teacher stepped up to the microphone and opened a golden envelope. The room went silent in anticipation, broken only by the hum of excitement. Then, as expected, the names were called: Drew Carter and Cassie Morgan. The crowd erupted with applause. Drew smiled confidently and made his way to the stage, waving at his friends. Cassie followed with a radiant smile, though up close it didn't quite reach her eyes. The crown was placed gently on her head, and Drew's matching crown rested perfectly on his. Cameras flashed. It should have been a memory frozen in happiness, but for Cassie it felt like a storm was about to break. As she stepped up to give the traditional prom queen thank you speech, her voice caught. She paused, looked out at the sea of smiling faces, and then, without saying a word, turned and walked off the stage. At first everyone assumed she had stage fright or needed a moment alone. Drew hesitated for a second, then followed her. The DJ, unsure what to do, resumed the music, and the crowd went back to dancing, but behind the scenes, the mood was beginning to shift. Cassie never returned. Drew searched the hallways, the bathrooms, even outside in the school courtyard. He called her name again and again, but there was no response. Her phone had been left behind on a table near the punch bowl, still lit up with missed messages. Her small silver clutch was untouched. Her friends thought she might have gone home early or felt unwell, but no one could reach her. Panic hadn't set in yet, but unease was spreading quickly. By midnight, the celebration had turned into confusion. Teachers began checking rooms, the parking lot, and surrounding areas. The principal made an announcement asking Cassie to return or contact someone if she was okay. Drew was now visibly shaken, his hands trembling, his voice cracking as he explained to police officers that she hadn't been upset earlier. Nothing had seemed wrong, except that strange look in her eyes. Police sealed off the building and began a formal search. Security footage from the main entrances was reviewed. But strangely, there were gaps. Several cameras had gone dark just before 10:30 p.m. No one could explain it. The footage that did remain showed Cassie stepping off the stage, but then vanished into static. The once joyful gym was now filled with tension and whispers. The DJ shut down the music. The lights turned ritter. Parents were called. Some students began to cry. Others simply stood in silence, unable to comprehend how a perfect night had turned into something so chilling. Cassie was gone, and with her, the magic of prom night had vanished too. By the first light of morning, the quiet town of Eastfield had transformed into the center of a growing nightmare. News of Cassie Morgan's disappearance had spread quickly, pulling in local media, search teams, and more than a dozen law enforcement officers. Parents gathered outside the school, desperate for answers. Helicopters hovered overhead. Every hallway, every room in the school was searched again and again. But it was what lay beneath the surface that held the truth no one wanted to find. The police brought in trained dogs to assist in the search. The dogs sniffed Cassie's belongings and quickly picked up a scent near the side of the stage, in an old storage room, used for broken props and unused gym equipment. Officers entered cautiously, sweeping flashlights across shelves stacked with dusty costumes and forgotten boxes. At first glance, there was nothing unusual, until one of them noticed a section of the wooden floor that seemed slightly raised, its tiles newer and less worn than the rest. Curious, the officers pried open the tiles. A foul, metallic smell rose immediately into the air. Beneath the floorboards, they discovered a shallow space filled with disturbed soil. The moment they uncovered it, the search ended in heartbreak. Cassie Morgan's body was found there, curled unnaturally in her glittering prom dress, her crown crushed beside her, her skin cold and pale. Blood had soaked the fabric at her stomach and chest, though the wounds looked precise, clean, calculated. She hadn't fought hard. She may not have had the chance. The scene was quickly secured. Forensics arrived and began documenting everything. A blood-stained ribbon was found clutched in her hand. Her earrings were missing, and there were faint bruises on her wrist, suggesting she had been held or dragged. But the most chilling discovery came from the school's camera system. Someone had tampered with it hours before prom. Cables had been sliced inside the utility closet behind the main stage, and all recordings from the time of her disappearance were corrupted. Whoever had done this knew exactly what they were doing. Drew was brought in for questioning again. He was in shock, unable to process what had happened. He insisted he had no idea who could have done this. He and Cassie hadn't argued. She hadn't mentioned any fears, but police already knew about the messages Cassie had received, the threatening notes, the anonymous warnings. They had found them among her personal items that morning, hidden inside a note. Officers interviewed dozens of students, teachers, and staff. Background checks were run. Relationships were scrutinized. But nothing led directly to a suspect. Cassie had been adored by many, but the deeper they dug, the more they discovered she also had rivals. People who felt overlooked, betrayed, or hurt by her rise to popularity. The truth, however, remained buried. And as the sun set on Eastfield once more, a grim silence hung over the school. The prom queen had been found, but the person responsible for her death had disappeared like a shadow in the night. The funeral was held 3 days after Cassie's body was discovered. Hundreds attended, many in disbelief, others simply broken. Her silver prom crown was placed inside the casket, a cruel reminder of a night that should have ended in celebration. Eastfield wasn't just mourning a teenager, it was mourning the loss of innocence, of safety, of trust. But while the town wept, investigators worked around the clock, desperate to piece together what had gone so horribly wrong. With little to go on, detectives returned to the gym, retracing every step of that night. They scoured the floor, the storage rooms, even the ventilation systems. Forensics found partial fingerprints near the cut camera cables, but none matched anyone in the school system. Police turned to digital evidence, going through social media posts, text messages, and student yearbooks. That's when something unusual surfaced. A teacher named Miss Dunley had been reviewing the printed yearbooks for the school archive when she noticed something strange. In the back pages, among the candid class photos, was a picture of a girl no one recognized. It wasn't part of the original design. The photo had been printed in black and white, unlike the others. The girl looked serious, her eyes distant. A red circle had been drawn around her face, and beneath it, in jagged, uneven letters, was a cryptic sentence. She took what wasn't hers. The yearbook printing company confirmed that the final files they received hadn't included that image. Someone had edited the digital version after submission and replaced one of the filler pages before printing. Investigators isolated the photo and ran it through facial recognition databases. The result led them to a name long forgotten in Eastfield, Hannah Lark. Hannah had once attended Eastfield High, but dropped out 2 years earlier. She had been a quiet, withdrawn student who struggled to fit in. According to old school records, she had a history of counseling sessions and reported incidents of bullying, none of which had been taken seriously at the time. What was more alarming was her past connection to Cassie. They had once been close, almost inseparable, until sophomore year, when everything changed. Rumors from that time suggested a love triangle. Hannah had a silent crush on a boy who later became Cassie's boyfriend, Drew. What started as friendship turned into rivalry, then faded into silence. Hannah left school the following year without explanation. Most had forgotten about her entirely, but Hannah hadn't forgotten them. Detectives traced her to an abandoned trailer park on the edge of town. The trailer she lived in was falling apart, windows boarded, and overgrown weeds surrounding the lot. Inside, the walls were covered in photographs, almost all of Cassie. Some were old yearbook cutouts, others were candid shots clearly taken without her knowing. Strings connected them like a map, notes scribbled in red ink circled around themes of betrayal, jealousy, and revenge. It was clear. Hannah hadn't just been watching Cassie. She had been planning her death for a long time, and prom night was her final act. When police entered the trailer, they found Hannah Lark sitting silently in a corner, her arms wrapped around her knees. She didn't run, didn't resist, and didn't speak as she was handcuffed and led outside. But what they found inside spoke louder than any confession. A small table near her bed held a blood-stained knife, partially wrapped in a cloth that matched the decorations from the prom. It had been carefully cleaned, but not well enough. Forensics would later confirm it was the weapon used to kill Cassie Morgan. Alongside it was a journal, filled with Hannah's handwriting, page after page of pain, bitterness, and obsession. She had documented everything, from her friendship with Cassie, to the moment it shattered, and finally, the years of isolation that followed. The journal revealed a mind unraveling slowly, poisoned by jealousy and rejection. To her, Cassie had become the symbol of everything she had lost: friendship, love, and a place in the world. Inside her distorted world, the murder wasn't a crime, it was justice. During questioning, Hannah finally spoke. Her voice was calm, almost detached. She said she had been watching Cassie for over a year, waiting for the perfect moment. Prom night was ideal: loud music, open doors, distractions everywhere. She had stolen a janitor's uniform weeks earlier and studied the layout of the gym. She even practiced how to disable the cameras and memorized the schedule of the teachers on duty. On prom night, she entered through a side door at 9:15 p.m., hiding in the storage room behind the stage. She waited there for over an hour. When Cassie won the crown, Hannah knew it was time. She slipped out just as Cassie stepped away from the microphone. She intercepted her behind the curtain, whispered something that startled her, and then dragged her silently into the storage room. What happened next, she said, was quick. She claimed Cassie didn't scream, just looked at her with wide, terrified eyes. The final blow, according to Hannah, came with a feeling of relief. She hid the body under the loose floorboards, covered it, and slipped away unnoticed. No one questioned the janitor walking calmly out of the gym minutes later. The courtroom was packed during the trial. The evidence was overwhelming. Hannah's journal, the fingerprints, the murder weapon, everything pointed to a premeditated killing. She showed no emotion during the proceedings, not even when Cassie's parents spoke of their loss. The jury reached a unanimous verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. After the trial, the town of Eastfield changed forever. The prom was officially cancelled in all following years. The school gym was demolished and replaced with a memorial garden for Cassie. Her classmates graduated, but none forgot the girl in the silver dress or the horror that stole her future. What had begun as a night of joy became a grim reminder that sometimes the most dangerous people are not strangers, but those who once stood beside you, smiling,